All right, here we are again at the EAA AirVenture 2015. We're talking to Elaine Buckner, Old Tower FAA person here at EAA Oshkosh. She's been here for many years.
This is my 16th year.
Okay. And you have an interest in aviation too, besides just being here. I understand you're a pilot, is that correct?
I am a pilot. I got my license about a year after I graduated from high school back in 1978. My mother asked me if I wanted a watch for graduation or 10 hours of flight time. So I went with the 10 hours of flight time, and then that morphed into actually getting my license about a year after I graduated. My mother is a pilot, and my father was a pilot as well. So the interest was there. In aviation all along, and the interest in Oshkosh has been there for a long time too. When I was a kid, we always flew into the EAA AirVenture back when it was at Rockford before it was even here, and then the years that it's been here, I've come a number of years. My mother has come every year. She's a very avid aviator and owns a Grumman Tiger.
Wow. Okay. Very interesting there. Ron, why do you want to come here every year and work in the control tower?
Oh, it's the people. I just love planning for this. It's a year-round planning effort. In fact, we've already started our planning procedures for next year. But it's gathering all the people together. We're like a family here. There's 86 of us that we bring in here. We bring in 16 teams of 4 controllers on each team. So that's 64 controllers. We do bring in an additional controller from the Sun and Fun experience. They vote for a controller of the year down there in the springtime, and that person gets to come work here. And we do the same thing with a controller of the year award here, and that person goes and works at Sun and Fun next spring. But we have 64 controllers plus the Sun and Fun controller of the year is 65. We have 14 supervisors, 3 operations managers, 2 support managers, an administrative person, and myself.
That is a lot. That is a lot of people here. But there's a lot going on here at Oshkosh during the week, so I guess you need have a lot of those people on hand to manage everything.
Yes, we do, and not just in the control tower. So many of you that have flown in here have seen this, but so we do have teams of controllers working in the control tower, of course, and they're the ones that are talking to the aircraft that are in the air and clearing them to land. But we also have a team of controllers out at runway 927 and at runway 1836. Those are the itinerant mobile and flyby mobile positions. We call them moo-cows affectionately. They're the ones that are clearing aircraft for takeoff right from the runway. And then we also have a team of controllers that are always staffed out at Fisk for the Fisk arrival procedure. And we have another team of controllers that are down at Fond du Lac. We have a temporary control tower there that we staff during this time of year only.
And that's why you need so many people.
Yes.
Okay.
And all those people, it takes 2 shifts a day to get through every day, and we staff that from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. for the control tower here, and Fond du Lac starts up at 7 a.m.
Okay. Well, very good. Now, many of the old-timers have been coming to Oshkosh forever that are probably watching this. They may not have even realized, that haven't been here for many years, that they tore down the old control tower that was here forever on the hill. And if you look behind us, Jim is showing us this is an actual brick from the old control tower, too. Piece of nostalgia there, so they saved some of it.
Like, well, the old tower, that's our rock, I've spent many a time, an hour sitting on the hill in front of the tower, in the shade of the tower, to watch the air show, and after having worked in the tower, and so there was a lot of thoughts about that. But at the same time, it was a very short structure, short in the numbers of floors and feet above the ground, but also short inside, in that the windows. The floor of the control tower cab and the ceiling reference how high the windows are for visibility. That was very low, so very limited visibility there. Again, the height, we couldn't even see the lake. There were some issues with trying to have visibility the approach end of runway 9 when aircraft were, when we did have to use runway 9. When we went into the new tower, all those misgivings or thought or concerns, I knew it would be better, but at the same time, it's like, oh, it's not going to be the old tower. But the new tower, from the moment we took it over and started running operations out of it, it was so much better. The acoustics were better. The space, it's like 3 times the size of the old tower. Plenty of room for folks for the numbers of people that we have to have work here during this event. It can handle it. The visibility is fabulous. All of a sudden, there's a whole lake out there, and we can see the whole final to runway 9, no matter how high or low it is.
Now, also, Elaine, we didn't really go into this yet, but you work for the FAA full time.
I do.
A paid job during the week, throughout the week, and you work at what airport?
I work at Minneapolis Tower. I'm the manager of Minneapolis Tower at Minneapolis, Minnesota. Have been for 3 years.
Okay, very good. Now, is that a very busy airport with takeoff and landings?
It is. Yeah. It moves up and down in the rankings, but it's been the 13th busiest in the country, so it's up there.
Wow. Okay. People are heading north. Okay. One of the things I know that everybody's itching, especially if they're pilots and have been to Oshkosh, that have probably encountered this, that they want to know, why does it take so long when they have an accident to clear it off? So can you explain a little bit of that process, why that takes so long with an accident or an incident that happens during Oshkosh and they're trying to get in and they get diverted or something of that sort? Okay.
Sure, I'd be happy to elaborate on that and to touch on a few different pieces of that. So anytime there's an incident here or an accident or an event, first of all, we shut the operations down completely so that all responders have clear access and safe access to get to whatever the situation is. So that also includes taxiing aircraft. Everything comes to a stop. When we have responders that are going out there, and this isn't our area of expertise, we're just trying to facilitate it for them. Sure. But they need to have clear, access to whatever they need to do. And so that means we not just shutting down the aircraft that are taking off and landing, but shutting down the aircraft that are taxiing around the airport, shutting down the ultralights, shutting down the helicopter operations, even though they're not at the runways. Because it may be that the crash, fire, and rescue, for example, or the responders that need to get out to whatever's going on, it may have taken all of them, or it may have taken some of them, and the situation has to be assessed for the incident commander in conjunction with the airport authority to determine if they have enough assets to put back into place at some point and start reopening things. And it takes a lot of time. And depending on what has happened or what's going on, it could be that there are pieces of equipment, fire trucks or ambulances or people that cannot be put back on location right away because they need to restock things. Ambulances are not on site. They've had to respond to other things. Those types of things just take time. And we also want to do it very carefully and very slowly. They do. And our job is not to oversee that, but is to oversee the surrounding airspace and to make sure that everything is buttoned down and safe and calm. And that when we do start reopening, we do it in a very a predetermined and graduated format. It's a process that we are always very careful with of how we start it back up again. Okay. So yeah, I know there's a lot of stress out there with the folks that had to divert too. Sure. Because they've got to, they're off at Fond du Lac or Appleton and they're trying to time when to come back in. We try to give out as much information as possible. We'll even put it on the ATIS. But we only know as much as we know at each given point along the way. We just try to keep getting updated and getting that information out.
Mm-hmm. Working as a controller in the tower at EA Oshkosh, from what we understand, you're selected. You just don't show up and volunteer.
No.
And could you explain some of that selection process and how that works?
Yeah, so there is a bid process, and it starts up around January. We disseminate a bid to the controllers that are in the central service area of the United States, and that's kind of the middle portion of the United States from north to south. Mm-hmm. The folks have an opportunity, the controllers that are fully certified at their home facilities, they have an opportunity to bid if they want to become a controller here. And there's different categories. categories in the bid. There's what we call a veteran. That's somebody who's got 4 or more years of experience. And there's a limited category. That's someone who's would be here for their 2nd or 3rd year they're bidding on. And then there's the rookie category. So on each team, of the 4 people, there are 2 veterans, one of them being a team lead. So that's probably the more experienced veteran on the team. And then there's the veteran, and then there's a limited, a 2nd or 3rd year person, and then there's a rookie. And that's the mixture of the controllers on the team, because we're always training and mentoring the next batch of folks that are coming along to take on the mantle of being the veteran or the team lead down the road. I mean, so it's a big honor to get selected.
Sure.
But the folks do bid, so they have to want to be here. They put their name in, and then we go through the process of making the selections. And they're coming from all different facilities, sizes and shapes of facilities. We have people here from O'Hare, and we have folks here that are from Crystal Tower near Minneapolis. That's a satellite facility at Minneapolis. So and they're from all over the country, like I said, from Minneapolis, Chicago, Texas, Houston, Dallas-Fort Worth, Dallas-Love. There's a variety of facilities. We also have some folks that join us from the Sun and Fun ranks, so that would be from the southern or southeastern part of the United States. So we have folks here from Florida, some folks from the eastern seaboard that are part of that operation down there.
Sure.
So it's a wide mixture. And then when they get here, there's a full day of training where we just spend walking through all the procedures. And again, the veterans can help train and mentor the new folks.
Sure.
And then eventually we go to work, and they work as a team.
Sure.
So that's what's very different from their home facilities for controllers. Back at their home facility, you work a position by yourself. I mean, you're working as a team, but everybody's on a different position. Here, 4 people are working one position, and one person is doing the talking, and the other 3 are spotting, looking at different parts of the pattern for aircraft position and type, and they're feeding information to the person that's speaking, the communicator, we call them. And the communicator is taking all that in and keeping an eye on the runway, but listening to what their spotters are telling them, and they're turning that into what they got to say on the frequency.
Sure. I guess one final thing is we need to touch on is just how many people, excluding the air show time, are working in the control tower at any one time and during OshKosh. And then also something that maybe a lot of our listeners and viewers may not understand is that during the air show time, when the air show is actually happening, that the FAA is not really responsible or in charge then.
Correct.
So maybe you could explain that, how all that works.
So I'm going to back up just a little bit. So during the normal time of the year, there's just a few folks that are in the tower controlling the operations, and that's normal operations.
This is when OshKosh is not happening.
Right. But then during AirVenture, when we come on board with all of us, at any given time we'll have 2 teams of 4 controllers each in the tower. So one team is working south local, one team is working north local. So that's 8 folks there, controllers. There's a supervisor, one supervisor plugged in with each of those teams. So now we're up to 10. There's an operations manager in the tower, so that's 11. And there's a controller that's working flight data, clearance delivery, and ground control, just assisting with clearances. And the ground control piece is not so much because we have all the volunteers, the flag folks that are doing that. But you'd be surprised how many people still call up on the ground control frequency with just questions and help and where am I at. And so we don't give them clearances on the ground, but we do provide assistance.
Direction.
Guidance.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, help when we can.
Right.
So there's 12 people at any given time up there. Plus, sometimes there's some extra folks. When we get really busy, there'll be another extra supervisor up there, and often an additional operations manager up there.
And then physically when the air show is taking place.
Right. So then when the air show takes place, and that starts at 2:30 each day, and it's in the NOTAM as well, that the airport's actually closed. So the airport authority has the airport NOTAM closed, and during that time period then the air show, the Performance Act is going on. And the EAA has an air boss that they have in charge of that. He's the communicator with the performers, and he helps them with any kind of issues that they have and the timing and coordination of their acts. And he's the one that's in charge of the airspace and the airport at that time. And we're really just here to monitor the airspace and the frequencies, to assist with anything that might come up with questions about anything else that's going on around the airspace. We're like a guardian of the airspace. We watch that and we let the air boss know if there's any intruders. There shouldn't be, but and there really aren't. But we keep an eye on that. We help out with giving them wind checks and watching the weather. We have a better view, when I say watching the weather, just because we're up in the tower and they're down by the runways closer to the performers. We have one of our supervisors down there with the air boss just to be right there in case they do have a question, and that person has a radio with the control tower and we can answer questions. And we're also there to take the airspace and the airport back if they need to give it back early. There's been years where we've had windstorms or an incident could happen where they need our help with taking the airspace back.
Sure. Okay, well that's very good. You've given us all kinds of information, Elaine.
This is a highlight of my year. I've loved doing this. I've done it for 16 years, and it's really about the people. The planes are a huge part of it. In fact, I went flying today. I flew the Fisk arrival procedure because I hadn't done it for a while. I went with someone else. But our role is to help, the flow of traffic in and out of here, and to try to keep it as safe as possible. Say welcome to Oshkosh, and it's stressful to fly in here. We recognize that.
Well, great. Once again, Elaine Buckner with the FAA. It's been a pleasure. You've given us a lot of info, probably more than we ever asked for. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, here we are again today at OshKosh AirVenture 2015. We just really pulled off a great one today. We were able to find this young man here, Charlie McGee, Tuskegee Airman with the Tuskegee Airmen. He flew in World War II. Probably a lot of people are familiar with that. And he actually said yes, he'd do an interview with us today. So we're going to learn a little bit about him and his fighter squadron today. All right, here we go. Okay, well, Charlie, a lot of people don't realize that you retired from the Air Force. How many years did you have in the Air Force?
I ended up with 30 years and a couple months of time because I love flying, and well, there was an element where if I wanted to go to the airlines, they weren't hiring black pilots, but I had a great career opportunities in the Air Force. Okay. So it was something I loved doing, so I stuck with it.
And a lot of people don't realize you retired as a full bird colonel, is that correct?
That is, yes. Unfortunately, promotions came along, and so I ended up as a full colonel.
And a lot of things that maybe a lot of people don't realize with the colonel is that he flew in 3 wars, and of course the first one was World War II, that he's probably the most well known for, Korea and Vietnam.
That's correct. World War II, and I could say that was the air superiority phase of flying. Interdiction and ground support was what I flew in Korea, and tactical reconnaissance, intelligence gathering in Vietnam. So I had a great experience.
Now, you had how many fighter kills in World War II?
Oh, I was fortunate to have a victory over a Focke-Wulf 190 over Parter Beach Aerodrome in August of 1944. So I only had one victory, but we didn't leave our bombers if they weren't attacked by fighters just to get a victory.
Okay. All right, very good. And you told me earlier in Korea you didn't have the opportunity really to fly fighters in Korea, but you were still flying the P-51, doing what?
Oh, interdiction and ground support. Never saw a MiG because I say they weren't down in trees where we were flying, supporting the ground elements. A little different.
And then you got to fly a big gas-guzzling Hog in Vietnam, and what was that?
That was the RF-4C, tactical intelligence gathering, and of course we carried no weapons. Our defense was speed. That was a little different, so it gave me all of the phases, however, of the aviation experience. As I say, air superiority in Europe, interdiction ground support in Korea, intelligence gathering in Vietnam. So it was quite an experience, and I enjoyed every bit of it.
So Charlie has definitely had a long career that was probably been filled with a lot of memories and a lot of excitement flying all those different types of aircraft. So, but I think a lot of people don't realize in World War II the Tuskegee Airmen, they kind of think of it as a small little group, and kind of surprised me too. The whole squadron consisted of how many people?
Well, in fact, you have to go beyond squadron because the program produced 4 single-engine fighter squadrons, 99th, 100th, 301st, and 302nd. Later, they produced 4 squadrons for the medium bomber, the Mitchell B-25. Again, 4 squadrons, and to maintain segregation by the Army Air Corps, they had all of their support. So several thousand people are involved in all the skills, the technicians, so keep the airplanes flying, but the other support such as medical, communications, supply. So a lot of people are involved, and really the airman program, and we call Tuskegee Airmen now because they built a separate airfield to keep segregation. That was Tuskegee Army Airfield, about 7 miles north of Tuskegee, Alabama. So that's why the name has stuck. But a lot of people were involved. The total program, as I say, produced 992 pilots and several thousand people in the support area.
That's quite an accomplishment right there, I think. Now, you faced a huge discrimination problem in World War II, of course. Everybody knows about that. When you served in Korea and Vietnam, was that much of a problem?
Well, no, because the Air Force had chosen to integrate, to use people based on their training and experience, not happenstance of birth is the way I put it, and meeting their requirements. So that was the change that the Air Force brought about, and one of the value lessons of the experience has been important. It helped provide equal access and equal opportunity for everybody based on their education, training, and preparedness. So that's an important lesson really for the country.
Okay, that's really great. I think we learned a lot of stuff from the Colonel today. Is there anything else you want to add or talk about before we close up?
Well, I would just say I like to pass on the value lessons that sustained us through that period are just as important today for our young people, for the future of our country, preserve the freedoms we enjoy and what the country faces. So we don't want to repeat the war, but we want our young folks to know about what it was all about and the whys and wherefores, but prepared to preserve our freedoms all into the future. And so that's what keeps us going while we're here now, if you will, to support young people in their interest in the aviation and space career opportunities.
Well, that's excellent. Well, Colonel, it's been a pleasure to do this interview with you today, and we really appreciate you being out here at EAA and hanging out with us, all those little people, okay?
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, and we wish everybody well. It's so important, and particularly, as I say, for the young people here, because they're our future.
Right. That's exactly right. Thank you very much. Here we are again at EAA AirVenture 2015. Today we pulled off quite a coup. We've actually been able to get over here where the Goodyear blimp is stationed at, and we're going to do an interview with one of the pilots, James Cosmos, and he's going to fill us full of all kinds of useful information about the newest and greatest airship that Goodyear has in their fleet. And from what I understand, it's probably one of the most advanced ones out there in the world right now. So it's kind of cutting edge for blimps. So, all right, James, you've been with Goodyear for how many years flying?
4.5 years.
4.5 years.
Yep.
Now, are you the main pilot, the captain, executive?
I am a captain on the. I'm a senior pilot NT for Goodyear Airship Operations, and I am a captain.
Very good. Okay. Well, I guess everybody probably wants to know all about this thing because, probably like me, they don't know a lot of stuff about blimps. So if you can kind of fill us in, give us the specs and the performance and stuff like that.
Well, the new airship is 246 feet long, about 60 feet high. If it didn't have helium in it, it would weigh about 20,000 pounds. So top speed is 73 miles an hour. We have 3 Lycoming IO360 engines on it, which are 200 horsepower each. The front 2 engines have gearboxes with propellers that can rotate from 0 to 120 degrees. And then we have the aft engine has 2 propellers with it, one vertical and one horizontal. When we're moving too slow and we don't have airflow over the fins, we actually use those 2 propellers as an elevator and a rudder by changing prop pitches. That way when we're slow airspeeds, there's no winds or anything like that, we still have full control, full maneuverability, which gives us the capability of being able to basically take off and land vertically.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, I guess, for a blimp nowadays, right?
Yeah.
That's cutting edge stuff, as we call it, right?
Yep, top of the line, so.
Okay. You're getting ready to take a media flight people up today?
Yeah, we're doing some media flights here at AirVenture, and we also do some charity auction winners. So.
And we don't really know the cost of this one because it's like top secret or something from what I've heard.
Not so much top secret, it's just I don't know, I wouldn't know how to calculate it because a lot of Goodyear people put time in to build it. So
I did want to ask you one thing. As far as blimps go, is this blimp fuel efficient?
Yeah, it's pretty fuel efficient. We have 3 Lycoming IO360s, and if we want to, we can get it down to 10 gallons per hour combined.
Wow, that's pretty cool because you have a lot of drag on this, obviously, as you're flying, right?
Yeah, it's less than the old conventional airships, but yeah, I mean it's an airship, so it's a drag machine.
And I understand that the skin on it, of course, Goodyear makes rubber products, as we all know, but Goodyear did not make the skin for this, right?
Yeah, we developed the skin for all the old airships. This one, we needed a little bit lighter skin, so we actually had a fabric company do the fabric for us.
Now, am I correct in saying that this is the only newest one you have in the fleet right now?
Yeah, this is the only one of its type right now flying in the world. We do have one about half built in the hangar right now.
All right.
Yeah, we hope to make the Kentucky Derby this year, hopefully, or next year maybe next year. But we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
All right. Well, their ship's starting up, so James needs to go. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So what we're excited about for this airplane is going to be able to do a broader set of missions, like the suppression of enemy air defenses, like interdiction, like strategic attack, like close air support, as well as doing some of the air-to-air. So it brings a broader breadth of capability.
Okay. Now, I'm under the understanding that this aircraft come online to replace some of our older types in the inventory, the F-16, F-15, A-10, stuff like that. Is that correct?
So the Air Force today, the average age of our fighters is 25 years. When you go back, prior to the end of the 1990s, which is when we really stopped procuring fighters in large numbers, all the way back to the Vietnam War and before, the average age was 10. So our airplanes are 2.5 times as old as they've been according to historical norms. And that presents a lot of challenges, right? We had an F-15 that broke up in flight, more than one F-15, 2 of them actually broke up in flight. We had some F-16 Londron problems that we were dealing with recently at Luke Air Force Base. And so what we're seeing is we need to recapitalize. And so the F-35 is going to be a big part of that, and we hope to acquire in large numbers so that we can gain some of the efficiencies of scale and recapitalize our older aircraft that are doing a broad set of missions.
Now, this is a stealthy aircraft, of course. It's got all the smooth lines on it, the jagged edges where things open on it,
right,
of course. And then it doesn't carry anything external, including fuel tanks. You don't hang anything on the outside.
We can. So right now you see it in a clean configuration, right, but we can load pylons and carry weapons externally, and we did that very deliberately. So the idea being, if you have a stealthy airplane and you put a bomb on the wing that's not stealthy, the package is no longer stealthy. So we recognize that in the early days of an air campaign, it's likely that we'll need that high-end capability that's provided with a full-up stealth platform. And so we can carry our weapons internally, but we're limited because we can't carry as many. So what we think is going to happen is in the opening days or maybe weeks of a campaign, we'll use that high-end capability, but then we'll have the flexibility later on when the threats are lower to be able to go and employ with external ordnance, will give us a lot more flexibility.
Yeah. You won't need to be so stealthy then, right?
Correct, because the threats that could target an airplane like this will have been rolled back then. And that's largely what we see in Afghanistan and some of the other conflicts we've been in. There's really no serious threat to fixed-wing fighter-type aircraft in those environments, and we expect that that'll be kind of the norm after those first few high-end days.
Now, some of the info and video that I've seen, especially the documentary between the big competition between Boeing and the manufacturers that are making this now, was that it's a single engine, but it's got a big honking single engine in it.
Big engine.
Yes, and it gives you an enormous amount of thrust. Can you tell us how much that engine puts out power?
Sure. So it's the same core as the F-119 that's in the F-22, which is a great engine. We have a lot of experience with it, a lot of confidence in it. We took that core and we scaled up the fan, so we have a larger diameter, a little bit more bypass, and that allowed us to get to the 40,000-pound class. And we did have a problem last summer with an engine fire, but we figured out what that is. We've implemented a fix. And other than that, we've been real happy with this engine. And we think that it's going to be very effective for us.
It's a real hot rod from what I understand.
It'll go. It's got a lot of thrust.
Yeah, and it's a little smaller than the F-22, right?
It is.
Yeah. A little lighter.
It's kind of the little brother to the F-22. Yeah. So the F-22 is 60,000-pound class airplane. This one's a little bit smaller, but again, it's optimized to do air-to-ground. So the F-22 can do air-to-air and air-to-ground, but its design focus and its strengths are mainly in the air-to-air region, whereas this airplane is almost 180 out, where it's focused primarily on air-to-ground. And while it can do air-to-air, it's optimized for additional air-to-ground missions that the F-22 isn't particularly capable at.
All right. And I understand that they're making 2 models. The Air Force has the A model, which is this one right here.
Mm-hmm. This is the A model.
And the Marine Corps are using the B model, which has the capability of hovering to replace the Harrier.
Right. And then there's a C model, so there's 3 that the Navy is procuring.
Okay. So it's kind of a one aircraft fits all, which takes care of a lot of roles too.
Right. So the idea being that if we made a lot of them, we had commonality, that would help us gain efficiencies in terms of production costs, but also help with the interoperability between the services as well with the partners that are flying it.
Can you tell us about what the final production cost is per aircraft now?
So right now we're in the low 100 millions per copy, and we think we're going to get to 85 million within the next 5 years.
The more you order, the better the price gets.
Absolutely, yeah. And that figure would be a little bit lower in today's dollars. That's in, I think, 2018 or 2019 dollars. So the production costs are coming down, working toward full rate production. Right now we're in low rate production, and we think that within the next 5 years we're going to get down to a figure of about $85 million an airplane for the F-35A. And that's going to compare favorably, I think, to what you would pay at that same time if you were to buy the alternative, which would be a Super Hornet or a new F-16 or something like that.
Excellent. Well, Colonel, do you have anything else more for us? I think this about wraps it up.
We're excited to be here. We appreciate you coming out. We're glad that a lot of people are coming by and asking good questions. And we think it's really important to be open and transparent and share with folks what's working and what the challenges are, but the fact that we're on the path to success.
Well, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Captain.
Thank you.
See you later.
For Fred, for Jack Schweiger, who was only in there for a week. First, how concerned were you that Jack replacing Ken Mattingly, who was exposed to measles and all that, how concerned were you that Jack wouldn't be able to make the transition and be the crew guy that you were used to working with?
Well, the movie seems that Jack has to earn his wings every day. Actually, Jack was a very confident astronaut. In fact, he contributed in developing now-functional procedures of a command module. So if Fred and I wanted a replacement for Ken Mattingly, Schweiger was the perfect person to have.
Right. So with the lead up and all the sims, what was your attitude about the launch, and how did the launch go?
Well, this was my fourth flight, so things were pretty knowledgeable about what was going to happen. Of course, this was Fred's first flight. Everything worked perfectly, and the countdown was fine. There wasn't any big delays in the final countdown, and so on liftoff, we were sort of happy.
Except
it took off at 13:13 Central Standard Time, and for some reason I should have realized that something was going to happen.
Had there been any consideration about jumping from Apollo 12 to Apollo 14?
Well, actually, I had Apollo 14. And so I was training for Apollo 14, Fred and I. Al Shepard had Apollo 13. But he had been grounded for several years. And NASA management figured that he needed some more training. So they came to me and said, would you mind taking 13? And give Al Shepard Apollo 14. I said, sure, why not? And my wife says that's a bad number.
All right, you launched, and how was everything going for a while?
The initial launch was fine. Everything worked great. The first stage was fine as it pushed us higher and faster. The Saturn, first of all, is to get us into Earth orbit before we go to the moon so we can test out our spacecraft in Earth orbit. As the first stage expended its fuel, we jettisoned it, and we lit the engines on the second stage as it kept going faster and faster. But about 2 minutes before it should have, the center engine shut down. And of course, we looked at each other and said, is this a crisis? Do we have a problem here? It turned out that the engine was going divergent on its structure, and had we not had a safety switch to shut it off, it would probably disintegrated and made for a very short flight.
Well, now, Fred, was that part of your particular... Milton's laughing like it was funny. What? Milton, what?
Well, that's pretty understated. It would have been a very short flight, all right, and it would have